Do something, Miss Marina.
28 disturbing Simpsons moments, 7 levels. From roasting Diddy's white party to Grandpa's eyes literally popping out. These are the most bizarre things to ever come from The Simpsons show. We'll start with some strange incidents, but the deeper we go into the iceberg, the more twisted it gets. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Marge crashes the elite. The Simpsons have never been afraid to poke fun at pop culture, but there are times where they go a little too far, turning a parody into a disturbing roast session. Like The Great Fatsby, a 2-part episode of the 28th season. It starts with Mr. Burns reminiscing about having his lavish old money gatherings. So, in a desperate attempt to feel young and relevant again, he decides to host another one, this time at his Middle Hampton estate. He plans the entire event himself, only for it to be a disaster. But then, from across the bay, Burns notices another party, a much larger and definitely better one. So, without any hesitation, he crashes it. That's when things get interesting. The event he stumbles into is a white party hosted by JG, not Z, a fictional hip-hop mogul clearly modeled after Diddy, Jay-Z, and Kanye West. The spectacle inside screams new money, with guests draped in expensive white suits and champagne flowing like water. Observing the scene, Mr. Burns casually says that the party was nothing like the white parties he used to host. Burns' white parties were filled with only the white, whereas JG's is modern, black, and free. It may seem racist, but it was also a direct hit on Diddy's iconic white parties from the early 2000s. Those extremely over-the-top events held in places like the Hamptons, where celebrities dressed in white to flaunt wealth, status, and influence. For many, these weren't just parties, they also symbolized the outrageous wealth difference among classes. Later, JG praised Mr. Burns on ruthlessness and giving him a limitless credit card as a gift. Burns goes on a massive shopping spree only to realize he was scammed. JG bankrupts him, mocks him in a viral video, and even ruthlessly strips him of everything. Many didn't find the episode funny, but rather a mockery of the success of black lives. A propaganda of a black guy being a thief and the actual racist as the victim. Treehouse of Horror 25. The Treehouse of Horror is an annual Halloween special on The Simpsons. It's known for being creepy and violent in its own way, but sometimes it crosses the thin line between funny and disturbing. School is Hell is the 25th annual Treehouse of Horror episode. The story starts with Bart in detention for spreading rumors about the lunch lady. While trying to kill time, he uncovers a strange Aramaic inscription on a desk. The moment he touches it, his fingers burn. So, like always, he ropes Lisa in to help. When she translates it, they're pulled into another realm, Hell. And weirdly enough, that's exactly where Bart fits in. He's placed in a school run by demons, and fittingly so, their curriculum involved creative punishments and mind games. Lisa, on the other hand, joins the Mean Girls and becomes an icy fashion queen. Bart excels in every class, but when they find a way home through a portal in Mr. Burns' office, Bart begs to stay behind. The school principal explains to Marge how they actually encourage kids like Bart, which quickly convinces her, and Bart finally returns. He climbs the ranks fast, all leading up to one final exam that puts him face to face with Homer. And the assignment? Let's just say it involves a cruel payback. Homer emotionally tells Bart to go through with it. He believes that the only way he'll feel like he's been there for his son. Bart follows through without hesitation and graduates as valedictorian, and no one even questions what it took to get there. The visuals alone are pretty intense. Skinned students on display, demon teachers in classrooms decorated with bones. But what stands out about this episode isn't just the setting, it's how quickly everything becomes normal. Bart is rewarded for cruelty, Lisa trades her values for popularity, and Homer doesn't just allow himself to be used. In fact, he sees it as the only way to make up for past failures. Level 2. Treehouse of Horror 11. Season 12 of The Simpsons opens with a Munsters parody, but the extent of cruelty shown in this one episode left many deeply unsettled. The plot opens with the same black and white theme of the Munsters and the Simpsons cast in familiar roles. Homer as Herman, Marge as Lily, Bart as Eddie, Lisa as Marilyn, and Grandpa as, well, Grandpa. Then, suddenly, the tone shifts from peaceful to barbarian. An angry mob of Springfield residents arrives with torches in hand, ready to raise hell on the monsters. There are no questions, no build-up, just straight cruelty. Marge and Grandpa are staked and left to bleed out, Homer is set on fire, Bart's head is literally snapped in a bear trap, and after all that, the mob just leaves. There's no hint of hesitation or remorse in them. Oh, and Lisa? She's the only one who looks normal, so she's spared. But what makes it disturbing is that she steps over the carnage of her own tortured family and simply leaves, as if she never knew them. And just like that, the episode ends. The episode's purpose was to highlight how society often turns cruel to anyone seen as different, and Lisa walking away was a clear representation of how quickly empathy fades in the real world. But the fans still found the gory scenes way too exaggerated. Itchy and Scratchy Serial Slaughter. The Itchy and Scratchy Show is a cartoon within The Simpsons. It follows Itchy, a sadistic blue mouse, and Scratchy, a helpless black cat who always ends up being the victim of Itchy's brutality. But in episode 16 of season 12, things hit a new low. The cartoon is pretending to sell Stabby-O's, a breakfast cereal with O-shaped pieces and marshmallow weapons like pink daggers, green hatchets, and yellow picks. But the ad for it? Let's just say it's unforgettable. It begins with two kids entering the kitchen to find Itchy and Scratchy preparing breakfast. Of course, it's Stabby-O's, but they have a very creative way of serving them. Itchy jams a funnel into Scratchy's mouth and empties a box of Stabby-O's down his throat. Then, in a horrid turn of events, he grabs a butcher knife and makes 3 cuts on Scratchy's chest. He pulls open the ribcage like swinging doors, and guess what? The Stabby-O's are perfectly served in the exposed cavity. Instead of being scared by the scene, the children grab their spoons and start eating the Stabby-O's straight from Scratchy's chest. Poor guy passes out in the process. And that's not even the end of it. A muffled voice replies, "Here I am." And Itchy lifts the cover off a silver platter to reveal Mom's severed head smiling back. With the cover off, her muffled voice becomes clear. But thanks to Stabby-O's, most of me is still in bed. And the ad ends. There's no punchline, no jingle, just a cheery decapitation to sell breakfast. Even Lisa thought this one crossed a line, the same Lisa who previously walked over her barely breathing family. And the fact that the cartoon was meant for kids in that show makes it even more appalling. Treehouse of Horror 8. Treehouse of Horror has always embraced chaos in the most gruesome manner, but few segments live up to the title, like Fly vs. Fly. At first, it's just another parody of the 1958 sci-fi film The Fly, and Mad Magazine's Spy vs. Spy with the usual Simpsons twist. It kicks off with Homer buying a matter transporter from Professor Frink during a yard sale. Bart, of course, isn't allowed to touch it, but that doesn't stop him. Inspired by the fly, Bart sneaks into the transporter with an actual fly, hoping to become a fly superhero. But to his disappointment, instead of gaining powers, he only ends up swapping heads with the fly. Now Bart's human body is walking around the house with a giant fly head, but nobody notices. His family accepts him with barely a second thought. They feed it breakfast and let it live among them. Meanwhile, Bart's tiny head on a fly is ignored, swatted at, and eventually chased away. Only Lisa listens to the actual Bart, and when she tries helping, she's choked by the giant fly with Bart's It all happens right in front of Homer, who, once again, doesn't bat an eye. Bart tries to intervene, but his tiny fly body is eaten alive by the giant fly hybrid. Lisa shoves the fly monster back into the machine, and somehow it returns the normal Bart with his own head. Later, instead of being thankful for getting his entire human son back, Homer chases him down with an axe for messing up with his machine. Not exactly what you'd call solid parenting, but then again, it's Homer. And let's not forget the body horror. The episode really pushes the limits of mainstream TV with identity crisis and violent animal-like behavior, making it one of the strangest Simpsons segments ever. And if that's your kind of content, why didn't you hit the subscribe button so you never miss a new upload? Now, on to the next level. Level 3. Snail Eye Surprise, Treehouse of Horror 28. Ever felt like leaving home because you don't feel like you belong? Well, Lisa felt exactly that, and what followed wasn't some magical escape. It was worse. This Treehouse of Horror episode takes on the movie Coraline, with Lisa as the curious lead and Snowball 5, voiced by Neil Gaiman, guiding her through a hidden tunnel into a perfect-looking alternative world. There, she finds a version of her family that's cheerful, attentive, and has buttons sewn over their eyes. Still, they cook her favorite food, they listen to her, they show care. It's almost too good to be true. And of course, it is. Because the next moment they ask to sew buttons over Lisa's eyes. Terrified, she bolts back home, but things at home aren't much better either. No one notices her, cares for her, or even remembers that she was missing for days. When they finally do notice, Homer is quick to shrug it off and give her room to Maggie. This was exactly the kind of neglect that makes the twisted world on the other side seem not that bad. So, Lisa tries to escape to there again, but she isn't the only one who feels that way. Soon, Bart follows suit and escapes through the tunnel, then Marge, and then finally Homer. And that's when all hell breaks loose. There's decapitation, stabbing, and even a version of Marge turning into a spider-like monster. Homer eventually brings the other family back into the real world to do chores, and everyone just settles in. No one questions the stitched eyes or the violence. By the end, the episode just stops being a parody and starts reflecting something disturbing, like how when one is neglected long enough, the fake attention from even a stitched-up version of one's family might feel better than the real thing. It's not just about buttons over the eyes, it's about slowly giving up pieces of yourself until you don't even recognize what's normal and what's not. Dental House of Horrors. Most kids are afraid of the dentist, but this episode of The Simpsons turns that fear into something far more unsettling. In Last Exit to Springfield, Lisa visits Painless Dentistry and learns she needs braces. Homer assures Marge their union's dental plan covers it, but then Mr. Burns decides to cut the plan entirely to spite his workers. After realizing that losing the plan meant he'd have to pay for Lisa's treatment from his own pocket, Homer becomes the union's president. Meanwhile, Lisa was again taken to Painless Dentistry to get the treatment her family could afford. There, the dentist straps her to a chair and cranks up the gas. She slowly falls into a kaleidoscopic hallucination straight out of Yellow Submarine. When she wakes up, it gets worse. Her new braces are ancient, as if they're made out of corroded metal, not to mention how they look like a headset. She even has to get some of her teeth pulled just to make that thing fit. When Lisa finally looks in the mirror, she loses it and starts laughing maniacally. At school, the photographer literally passes out upon seeing her braces. Lisa starts thinking she's become some sort of monster. All because a corporation wanted to prove a point. After a series of failed altercations, Mr. Burns agrees to give the employees a dental plan in exchange for Homer's resignation as the union's president. The plan is reinstated, and Lisa finally gets real braces. Fans found it deeply disturbing that a child's misery was used for some laughs. The scene also played on deep childhood fears of dental pain and embarrassment attached to looking different, especially if that difference is a giant corroded metal bar screaming imperfection. Homer the Clone Slayer, Treehouse of Horror 13. Imagine making an entire army of identical men. They could build empires in seconds, but if every single one of them is Homer Simpson, well, it can only lead to chaos. The Simpsons episode, Send in the Clones, is the picture definition of what that chaos will look like. The plot begins with Homer's hammock collapsing while he's taking a nap. When he buys one from a passing vendor, he's warned that the hammock is cursed. God, it doesn't even include a free Frogurt. But Homer doesn't care and still lies on it, only to find that the new hammock produces clones of anyone who uses it. He inspects the first clone and notices that it doesn't have a belly button. But that's okay to him. Who needs a belly button when you can build your own workforce? Homer assigns each clone a task and spends his day relaxing, until one of them literally beheads Ned Flanders with a chainsaw. Surprisingly, Homer acts fast. He loads up all the clones into his truck and leaves them at a cornfield. But he makes a tiny mistake of leaving the hammock with them. You can guess what happens next. An entire army of Homer's clones is produced, ready to wreak havoc on Springfield. It all becomes a matter of national security, and even the army gets involved. Lisa gives them a genius idea to tie giant donuts to helicopters and lure them off a cliff. The plan works and everything goes back to normal, except for Homer. Turns out the real Homer was as much tempted by the donuts as his clones, and is the first one to fall off the cliff. Meanwhile, the one who came home is a clone. Although the episode skips the chainsaw scene, it does show Ned Flanders' severed head, taking cartoon violence to a disturbingly absurd level. It also feeds into people's paranoia regarding cloning technologies that have the power to change the world, or perhaps destroy it. Melting face horror. Except for the Treehouse of Horror, The Simpsons' regular episodes mainly rely on sharp jokes and pop culture references. However, Brother from the Same Planet feels like it accidentally got mixed up with the horror house. In this episode, Homer forgets to pick Bart up from soccer practice because he's too busy watching TV. Several incidents happen that should have reminded him of his son, like a football documentary, an ad about Bart, and even Maggie babbling his name. But Homer stays oblivious. It isn't until he has a haunting daydream of finding Bart's skeleton on the field that he finally snaps out of it and rushes to pick up his son. Meanwhile, Bart is bullied and left alone in the pouring rain. By the time his dad shows up, Bart is soaked and furious. Homer realizes his mistake and offers him a sundae, but it just adds insult to injury when a bump causes the ice cream to fall on his head. In a silent fit of rage, Bart pictures Homer's face literally melting as he says, "Now, how about a hug?" in a very haunting voice. The episode doesn't end there, it continues like any usual episode, but the visual of Homer's distorted face leaves the viewers uneasy. The body horror might be just another Simpson-style depiction of Homer's guilt eating up at him, but fans felt it crossed the line between satire and sinister. Tamaco Terror. Simpsons is known to take something perfectly normalized in society and peel back its skin to show what's underneath. And the disturbing scenes in E.I.E.I.DO are anything but appetizing. The episode starts with the Simpsons family ending up on a farm because of some Homer shenanigans. To survive, Homer becomes a farmer, but nothing grows on that land. Hopeless, he calls Lenny and asks for some plutonium, which is ironically needed to make the soil fertile. The plutonium works, but in his haste, he ends up mixing the tomato and tobacco seeds together. This creates a hybrid crop that resembles a tomato on the outside, while the inside tastes like cigarette butts. It was disgusting, but dangerously addictive. Homer named it Tamaco and started selling it. People went wild for it. Even the farm animals got hooked. Before long, executives from Laramie Cigarettes show up offering to buy rights for it. While the negotiations are going on, tobacco-addicted animals break into the field and devour the entire crop. Only one plant is left, which somehow lands in the hands of the executives. Just as they try to escape in a helicopter, a tobacco-crazed sheep crashes into it. Everyone on board loses their lives, and the sole tobacco plant is destroyed. The Simpsons, being how they are, return home like nothing happened. The tobacco plant may be gone, but the episode was a disturbing reality check of how easily something dangerous can be sold to the masses, all in the name of new and advanced technology. Homer's DUI double-cross. The episode Codependence Day begins as a mission to save the Cosmic Wars franchise, but quickly spirals into a tale of lies and betrayal. Bart, Lisa, and Homer watch the newest Cosmic Wars movie, The Gathering Shadow, but are utterly disappointed by it. They criticize its lack of storytelling and overuse of special effects. Marge suggests the kids write a letter to the movie's creator, Randall Curtis, but he only replied with generic merchandise, ignoring their actual feedback. This frustrates the whole family, so they decide to travel to California and settle matters in person. There, Homer and Marge try wine tasting, while Bart and Lisa visit the Cosmic Wars ranch. At the ranch, the kids meet Curtis and successfully get their point across. Meanwhile, Homer and Marge end up heavily indulging in wine tasting, and even after returning to Springfield, their binge drinking continues. Eventually, Marge suffers a painful hangover, and the couple decides to stop, though things don't go as planned. Soon, at the Oktoberfest, both get extremely drunk again, and Homer tries to drive under the influence. Not so surprisingly, he crashes the car, but before anyone can accuse him, he switches seats with a passed-out Marge who ends up going to jail. Homer eventually bails her out, but the damage is done. Marge checks into rehab, and there Homer confesses to lying about the accident. She is heartbroken at the betrayal and briefly relapses, but with the help of the patients, she realizes she loves being with Homer more than drinking. So she forgives him and comes home on the condition that he promises to drink less. The episode ends with a happy note, but leaves a bitter aftertaste. Some viewers called it an unforgivable betrayal and that Marge should have walked away from that marriage. But maybe love really is blind. Level 4. Family Strangle Scandal. Bart and Homer's relationship is quite an example of tough parental love. But at some point, you start to wonder, is there any love at all? In the episode Love is a Many Strangled Thing, Homer saves Mr. Burns' life and wins NFL tickets for the whole family, but what should have been a fun day quickly turns humiliating for Bart. When he refuses to dance at the game, Homer tickles him to the point he wets himself on the Jumbotron. And somehow the image of Bart's wet shorts end up on Russian spy satellites, triggering a full-scale invasion. Back home, Marge urges Homer to work on his parenting, so he enrolls in a parenting class led by Dr. Xander. During the session, Homer casually mentions that he often strangles Bart, which naturally leaves the therapist horrified. To make Homer realize how Bart must feel, Xander brings in basketball legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who, along with his friend, relentlessly strangles Homer. The therapy works a little too well. Homer is traumatized and can no longer bring himself to punish Bart, even when he becomes increasingly out of control. In desperation, Marge tracks down Dr. Xander and begs him to fix the situation. He agrees and takes Bart and Homer on a bonding trip, but even that plan backfires. Bart enjoys watching Homer suffer and shows zero remorse. When he prefers texting over saving his hanging father, even the therapist loses it and strangles him. Only that makes Bart rescue Homer so that he could save him from Dr. Xander. The episode tried to address the normalization of the long-running choking joke, but instead enforced the disturbing practice of using violence to discipline. Even the UK regulators found the Kareem shock therapy scene too intense for the general audience. That still didn't lead to any censoring, and the episode continues to air as it is. Cape Fear's Deathly Threat. Filled with malicious threats, stalking, and harassment, Cape Fear might be the most disturbing and unhinged episode in The Simpsons history. It all starts when Bart begins receiving terrifying letters with "I'm going to kill you" written in blood on them. As the threat escalates, so does Bart's paranoia. Meanwhile, Sideshow Bob, whom Bart exposed in Season 1, is up for parole. Despite his newest victim Selma's testimony against him, Bob's lawyer is able to turn the court in Bob's favor, and he's released on parole. The Simpsons are unaware of his release until they run into him at the theater. It's later revealed that Bob was the one sending bloody letters to Bart. The family quickly contacts Chief Wiggum, who places them in a witness relocation program for protection. The Simpsons are then renamed the Thompsons and are sent to Terror Lake, where they settle into a houseboat. However, Bob tails them all the way. He sneaks into the houseboat, cuts the rope, and lets the boat drift into the swamp. After tying up the rest of the family, Bob corners Bart with a machete, who tries to run away. But since the swamp is full of eels and alligators, there is no escape. Just when it seems all hope is lost, Bart spots a sign saying the boat is drifting towards Springfield. So to stall for time, he asks Bob to sing the entire score of HMS Pinafore. This hits a nerve, and Bob goes all in, performing the operetta in a full costume with props. But the moment he hits the final note, the boat is surrounded by police officers who arrest him once again. Normally, The Simpsons wraps its darkest moments in humor, but in Cape Fear, the horror feels uncomfortably real. Even Simpsons veterans found the idea of an actual criminal stalking a child, sending bloody threats, and planning his next victim extremely disturbing. Maggot-eyed Grandpa. Out of all the Simpsons moments, Grandpa's eye popping out in the Scorpion's Tail episode is easily one of the most disturbing visuals of all time. The episode begins with Lisa discovering a calming extract from a desert flower called Silver Tongue. She's fascinated by it and brings one home for research. Around the same time, Grandpa is thrown out of the Springfield retirement castle for his outrageous behaviors. He moves in with the Simpsons, but his toxic attitude makes him unbearable for the family as well. When Lisa shows Homer her research, he thinks Grandpa would be an excellent candidate to test the calming extract. Surprisingly, the extract works. Grandpa becomes cheerful and kind. The Simpsons are relieved by the pleasant change, but soon the side effects start appearing. And we're not talking about a cough or a rash. Grandpa's eyes literally pop out, making him completely blind. And that's not the end of it. Bart had already sold the drug to masses in secret, blinding nearly all of the elderly in town. This leads to an angry mob of blind old folks preparing to take down the Simpsons, but Grandpa de-escalates the situation. He shifts the focus and starts blaming the older generation for letting the newer ones becoming so entitled. The tone of the entire episode shifts, and the elders push their eyeballs back in, regaining both sight and clarity. They decide to help the Simpsons rather than punish them, and it all ends with one generation fixing the other. On the surface, it may seem like a wholesome lesson, but it was actually a disturbing representation of how shady pharmaceuticals often use gullible old folks as their guinea pigs, and the fact that there's little to no awareness among people on the matter. Springface Carnage. The way the Social Network episode exposes the gruesome reality behind real-world addiction to social networks was something no one saw coming. The plot starts with Lisa making an app called Springface, and it's kinda like Facebook, but far more addictive. In fact, the app spreads so fast that people can't put their phones down even while driving. Soon, drivers using their phones cause a massive freeway pileup that takes 35 lives. Springfield falls into a digital mayhem, and Lisa is put on trial as the one responsible. There, she tries explaining her side of the story about how Springface helped her make friends with people who didn't even like talking to her in reality. But now, because of the same app, nobody is talking to anybody in person. They're all glued to their phones. The judge orders her to immediately shut it down, which she does, and life in Springfield goes back to being normal. The episode may have been a jab at Facebook, but the most disturbing thing is how it reflects addiction to validation, and constant digital connection can literally lead to societal collapse. Thank goodness that's not happening. Corkscrewed Crusto. Not It is a Treehouse of Horror episode that parodies the horror film It. Viewers have found the episode even scarier than the movie, as it shows a disturbing reflection of childhood fears. The story starts with Crusto, the sinister clown who first appeared in 1990. He lures children into the sewers, never to be seen again. Young Homer and a group of teenagers called the Losers somehow defeat him, but he's bound to return every 27 years. So, in 2017, Crusto comes back and immediately takes the lives of 4 teenagers. The town barely reacts, so Homer reassembles the Losers to stop him. But here's the twist. Crusto has evolved. He no longer feeds on childhood fears. Instead, he thrives on adult anxiety, something deeper and much harder to escape. Crusto weaponizes comedy for control and draws power from the laughter of his ghost audience. To destroy him, the Losers destroy the laugh sign controlling the audience. Without the laughter, Crusto loses his power and dies. People found the episode triggering as it tapped into a deeper, less addressed fear surrounding adult mental decline. Crusto's obsession with kids extending from their childhood to adulthood reflects how childhood trauma never really goes away. It waits and then consumes when one least expects it. Level 5. Lovable Panda Assault Part 2. Homer vs. Dignity begins with the Simpsons struggling financially, and their only solution comes from sacrificing their dignity. Homer asks Mr. Burns for a raise, but instead of agreeing, Mr. Burns decides to turn him into his prank monkey. This means he forces Homer to do humiliating things like dressing up as the new female panda donated to the Springfield Zoo, all just for laughs. However, things quickly escalate when the male panda at the zoo shows interest in the Homer panda and forces himself on him. Homer tries to escape, but he gets caught on the fence and loses the head of his costume. To make matters worse, Lisa catches him in the embarrassing act. She urges Homer to stand up for himself, and he finally realizes that he's being exploited. Later, Homer refuses to be Burns' prank monkey anymore and donates all the money to charity. Mr. Burns tries to lure him again with more money, but surprisingly fails. The episode concludes on a positive note, but the blatant display of inappropriate workplace behavior triggered significant backlash. Critics said it crossed boundaries into taboo humor, calling it the show's most uncomfortable gag. Brazilian Bird Blunder. An American cartoon causing an international uproar is news, but when it's The Simpsons, it's almost expected. Blame It on Lisa from season 13 is one such episode. The plot starts with Lisa and her family traveling to Rio de Janeiro to find an orphan named Ronaldo, whom Lisa has been sponsoring. When they reach, they see flocks of bizarre birds flying around, painting an eerie atmosphere. The episode leans heavily into stereotypes, portraying Brazil as full of rats, crime, and chaos. Critics were also upset by the cultural inaccuracies, such as characters speaking Spanish or dancing the Macarena, which are not even Brazilian traditions. It reached a point where the Rio Tourism Board considered suing Fox, claiming the episode damaged the city's image after they had spent almost $18 million on tourism promotion. Even Brazil's president at the time called the portrayal distorted. Fox producers defended the episode as satire, with executive producer James L. Brooks offering a sarcastic apology and joking that Homer would fight the president in celebrity boxing. Despite the controversy, the episode still aired in Brazil with a small disclaimer. Tiananmen Time Bomb. After messing with Brazil, The Simpsons turned to China and touched a nerve that no one dares to poke. Goo Goo Gai Pan episode centers around Selma trying to adopt a baby. After a failed attempt in Springfield, she decides to try in China, but to do that, she needs a husband since the Chinese government only gives babies to couples. On Marge's insistence, Homer agrees to pretend to be Selma's husband, and the whole Simpsons family flies to China. Everything goes well until the family visits Tiananmen Square, where they see a plaque that says, "On this site in 1989, nothing happened." This darkly ironic joke points to the Chinese government's ongoing censorship of the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. These were student-led demonstrations calling for democracy and free speech, but the military violently suppressed them. Though the exact death toll of the massacre is unknown, estimates range from hundreds to thousands. To this day, the event remains heavily censored, and thus, the "nothing happened" joke caused the episode to be banned in China. Later in 2021, when Disney Plus launched in Hong Kong, every Simpsons episode was available, except this one. Emperor Takedown Taboo. While we're talking about The Simpsons' global satire, it's impossible not to mention the episode 30 Minutes Over Tokyo. The Simpsons travel to Japan for their family vacation, but there they end up spending the last of their pennies. This leaves them with no choice but to appear on a dangerous Japanese game show in exchange for tickets back home. The episode upsets many viewers. It showed a Hello Kitty factory that joked about burning cats, and even a cartoon called Battling Seizure Robots, mocking Pokemon, and a bit of a scandal around that. But the most offensive moment came when Homer mistook the Emperor for a wrestler and threw him in a box of sumo thongs. In Japan, the Emperor is treated with deep respect, so showing violence against one of the most influential figures was considered a serious taboo. The episode got a huge backlash from all over Asia for disrespecting Japan's culture. It even got banned in Japan and South Korea and was pulled from Disney Plus. Level 6. Iconoclast Assassination Echo. In Level 6, we will discuss one of the strangest coincidences that happened in The Simpsons show. In the episode Lisa the Iconoclast, Lisa discovers that Jebediah Springfield, the town's beloved founder, was actually a pirate and a fraud. During the town's bicentennial celebrations, she tries to reveal the truth, but in that exact moment, the camera shifts to a scene of a rooftop where a police officer is shown aiming a gun at her head. The cost of the truth was going to be her life, and the system was ready to put down a child to avoid getting exposed. But on stage, Lisa realizes that the legend of Jebediah is what brings hope and unity to the people of Springfield, and if she were to reveal the truth, people would be heartbroken. Eventually, she decides against it, unaware of the fact that it just saved her life. The episode highlighted how anyone who opposes the system is either completely shut down or erased from existence. Years later, in July 2024, an actual rooftop shooter attempted to assassinate Donald Trump during a rally. Channel 4 in the UK pulled the Simpsons episode from a scheduled rerun, saying it hit a little too close to reality. This stirred a disturbing controversy, with some confused as to how could The Simpsons predict the incident or worse. What if the show inspired the incident? None of the theories were proved, but the uncanny similarity is still hard to ignore. Tourette's gag backlash. Simpsons is notorious for poking fun at controversial topics, be it politics or historical events, but it reached a new low in Marge Gets a Job. The episode begins with Marge starting work and Bart faking a stomachache to dodge his test. It works at first, but then Mrs. Krabappel suggests a makeup test, sabotaging Bart's plan. Despite Bart's multiple attempts to dodge the test, Mrs. Krabappel still brings it up. She reminds him how he has feigned smallpox, the bends, and an unfortunate bout of Tourette's syndrome, so nothing will work anymore. Bart sees this as his last chance and goes all in. He starts twitching, barking, yells, and ends his drama with a "shove it, witch," before he collapses. It was meant to be a silly exaggeration of a kid's excuses, but many saw it as offensive. A child with Tourette's spoke out, saying the joke was hurtful, and asked for both an apology and the scene's removal. Producer Mike Rice admitted they had made a mistake and apologized. In response, Tourette's was changed to rabies in reruns on DVDs and on Disney+. However, not all versions were fully updated. Some still use the word Tourette's, but remove the barking and swearing, which makes the scene feel even more disjointed and awkward. Grimes' grim fate. Frank Grimes did everything right while Homer Simpson didn't do anything at all. And guess who ended up in a coffin? The episode Homer's Enemy features Frank Grimes, a hardworking man who struggled his whole life to get ahead. He gets a low-end job at the nuclear plant where he meets Homer. Grimes becomes furious seeing how Homer, despite his incompetence, has everything: a great job, a loving family, and a series of unbelievable achievements. He tries to expose Homer's flaws and even tricks him into entering a children's science contest. But unexpectedly, instead of being humiliated, Homer is awarded the first prize. In a fit of sheer madness, he mocks Homer's behavior, pretends to be him, and accidentally electrocutes himself. At his funeral, Homer falls asleep and starts sleep-talking. Grimes, even in death, is humiliated once again as Homer's antics leave the mourners laughing. In the end, Grimes becomes a sad symbol of people who work hard and try to do everything right but still get overlooked. Meanwhile, someone like Homer, who barely tries, gets a free pass to everything. Fans call the entire episode a disturbing reflection of just how unfair the world can be. Stark Raving Groomer. Stark Raving Dad was once a fan-favorite Simpsons episode, best known for its mystery guest star, Michael Jackson, until a 2019 controversy caused it to be banned. The episode follows Homer as he's sent to a mental hospital for wearing a pink shirt to work. There he meets Leon Kompowski, a big white man who claims to be Michael Jackson, and guess who voices him? It's the King of Pop himself. Though Jackson went uncredited, his involvement in the episode made it one of the most iconic episodes in the show's early years. But things soon changed for the worse. In 2019, the documentary Leaving Neverland reopened allegations against Michael Jackson, and it had a huge impact and drastically changed how people viewed the star. As a result, Fox and Disney Plus were forced to pull the episode from all platforms. Even though Jackson had not been found guilty back in 2005, the renewed controversy made the creators uncomfortable. Simpsons producer Al Jean even stated that Jackson might have used the cameo as part of the grooming behavior. Today, the episode is missing from Disney Plus, modern DVDs, and TV reruns, and it might be the only episode removed out of concern for possible involvement in abuse. Nightmare Cafeteria Cannibalism. This Treehouse of Horror episode showed a new disturbing side of Principal Skinner that left fans horrified. The old man, who was often a subject to kids' pranks, sought revenge in the most unimaginable way possible. Nightmare Cafeteria starts normally, with Principal Skinner acting his usual uptight self. But things take a disturbing turn when Jimbo Jones spills soup on himself and lunch lady Doris. Skinner eyes Jimbo like he's some steamed hams and decides he'd make a good lunch. Alarmingly, Doris goes along with it, and the next day, sloppy Jimbo burgers are served in the cafeteria. But then it gets even creepier. After just one taste, the school staff becomes obsessed with serving students as meals. More and more kids are sent to detention for the smallest reasons, and they never come back. Despite the shocking rise in disappearances, none of the parents seem to notice, or in true Springfield fashion, they simply ignored it. Bart and Lisa begin to catch on, but by that time, Skinner is already taking complete control. The siblings try to escape him but fail, and just when it seems like the end, Bart wakes up. Turns out it was just a nightmare and everything is normal. But that relief doesn't last long. A mysterious fog rolls into the Simpsons' home, turning the family inside out in one final twist. And in classic Simpsons fashion, they burst into a musical number. It's a dark parody of One from a chorus line, and all this happens while Bart is being dragged across the floor by their dog. The episode itself didn't have any meaningful message, just a grotesque plot turning a serious crime into comedy. Reddit found it to be nightmare fuel for kids and one of the most disturbing Treehouse episodes of the show. Level 7. The Corpse in the Drain Pipe. So far in this iceberg, Simpsons have caused international riots, tapped into childhood wounds, and stirred controversies. But in the blunder years, it revealed a grotesque reality. The episode takes a weird turn when Homer gets hypnotized and suddenly starts screaming at the top of his lungs. Turns out it's because he unlocked a buried childhood memory. When he was 12, he had jumped into a muddy quarry and grabbed what he thought was a rock, only it wasn't a rock. It was a maggot-filled, decaying corpse stuck inside a pipe. In the scene, the camera lingers on the slimy corpse for a disturbingly long time. The moment was so traumatizing for Homer that he screamed to the point it damaged his vocals. Later, the family investigates and finds out that the body belonged to Mr. Smithers' dad. He had died saving the plant from a meltdown, but instead of giving him a proper burial, Mr. Burns just dumped the body to cover it up. What makes the episode so creepy is that it's not part of a Halloween special. It aired like a normal episode, but had a full-on body horror, childhood trauma, and a big corporate cover-up. Fans called it one of those rare Simpsons moments where comedy takes a back seat, and what's left is pure dread. Maggie shoots Mr. Burns. Who Shot Mr. Burns became one of the most debated and disturbing episodes of the show due to its unsettling cliffhanger. It begins with Mr. Burns making the lives of all Springfield's residents miserable. Almost everyone in the town hated him, but he was pretty unbothered by it. Until one day when someone shoots him. Part 1 ends with no explanation as Chief Wiggum launches a full-scale investigation to figure out who it was. In Part 2, Mr. Burns somehow survives the shooting and is hospitalized. Meanwhile, Springfield's police are still on the lookout for the shooter. All the evidence ended up pointing to Homer, who then became the main suspect. However, in a shocking twist, Burns reveals that it was actually baby Maggie who shot him when he had tried to steal her lollipop. According to his statement, the gun slipped and Maggie accidentally pulled the trigger. But was it really an accident? The end brought up some serious questions among fans like, how did a baby even get a gun? And who's really to blame when something like this happens? The whole thing feels like a dark take on the danger of unlocked firearms in the range of kids. The internet sleuths came up with several disturbing theories of their own, with some pointing out that perhaps Marge or Homer were behind it, whereas others believe Maggie to be a decoy and the actual killer to still be on the loose. Electrocution in Treehouse 12. At the bottom of the iceberg, we have the most gruesome segments of Treehouse of Horror to ever come from The Simpsons show. Treehouse of Horror 12 opens season 13 with a bang, quite literally. The plot starts with Smithers trying to decorate Mr. Burns' mansion for Halloween. Poor guy is shown struggling on a ladder trying to hang a tiny bat decoration on top of a lightning rod, because of course, Mr. Burns insists it wouldn't be scary if it's not at the top. Smithers actually manages to hang it, but then he slips, grabs a live wire, gets electrocuted, and crashes into a power box. And that's not even the worst part. His fall causes a whole tower to collapse onto the Burns family museum. The impact smashes it open and sends 4 coffins flying, which land upright and swing open. They reveal a pirate, a 4-star general, and a dancer, all fully dead and very visibly decomposed. Right then, the Simpsons family arrive to trick-or-treat, all dressed up in costumes. But just as they show up, Smithers' burning body explodes into flames. To make matters worse, the sparks from the blast set the corpses on fire. The Simpsons scream and try to run away, but as they rush through the closed iron gate, they're sliced into vertical pieces. Though that doesn't stop them. The sliced-up pieces keep running and screaming as they scatter into the woods like some sort of confetti. Mr. Burns, on the other hand, is shown casually climbing the ladder and enjoying the fireworks. And just when you think it's finally over, the tiny bat from before comes alive and flies straight into the screen to reveal the Halloween title. Fans consider it one of the most twisted openings in a Treehouse of Horror episode, with all the burning corpses, sliced-up Simpsons, and Mr. Burns' bizarre indifference. If you haven't gotten your fix of disturbing cartoons yet, why not check out this video on the most disturbing SpongeBob controversies next?